The first thing I heard was a sound that didn't belong to the world of the living. Beep, beep, beep. Slow, mechanical, patient, like something was counting down or counting me back. Pain tore through my chest so violently that my eyes flew open without permission. I didn't wake up gently. I surfaced like a man dragged from deep water, gasping, disoriented, burning under the glare of fluorescent lights that felt too bright for someone who had almost slipped into darkness forever. The air smelled sharp, sterile, unforgiving. Hospital. My throat felt like sandpaper. My lips were cracked. My body didn't feel like my own. It felt borrowed, heavy, distant, slow to respond. I tried to move my fingers, and even that felt like lifting weights. And in the middle of all that pain, my mind didn't go to fear. It didn't go to anger. It went to my children. Because no one tells you this truth about being a parent. No matter how badly your children hurt you, your heart still panics at the thought of hurting them back. You can endure being broken yourself, but the idea that your suffering might spill onto them, that's unbearable. I didn't know where I was, but I knew I didn't want them to worry. A tug at my arm pulled my eyes downward. A tube was taped into my skin. Machines blinked beside me. Metal rails surrounded the bed like a cage. I tried to sit up. Big mistake. A wave of dizziness crashed into me so hard the room spun. My legs felt like they didn't exist. I fell back against the pillow with a weak groan I barely recognized as my own voice. White walls, metal, silence. Then I saw the table beside me, my wallet, my gold watch, and my glasses. One lens cracked like shattered ice. My heart skipped. Those glasses. I was wearing them when headlights exploded in my vision. A truck horn screamed. Metal shrieked. The world spun. Then nothing. An accident. I'd been in an accident. My hand trembled as I reached for the call button and pressed it. It took everything I had just to lift my thumb. A nurse walked in moments later, calm and steady like she'd seen this 100 times. "Oh, good," she said softly. "You're awake." Her voice felt far away, like I was underwater. I tried to speak, only a rasp came out. She adjusted something on the machine beside me. "Don't try to talk yet. You've been through a lot." How long? The question burned in my mind. She must have seen it in my eyes. "You were in a serious car accident," she said gently. "You've been unconscious for 3 days." 3 days. My heart started pounding harder. "My phone," I croaked. She hesitated, just for a second, but that second changed everything. "We tried contacting your family," she said carefully, "but there seems to be some confusion." Confusion? My chest tightened, and this time it wasn't from the injury. "What do you mean?" I forced out. She gave me a look I didn't understand. Not pity, not fear. Something worse. Avoidance. "Rest for now," she said. "The doctor will explain." Explain what? She left the room, and the silence that followed felt heavier than the pain in my chest. I stared at the cracked lens of my glasses. If I had been unconscious for 3 days, why hadn't my children been here? Why hadn't anyone come? The door opened again. A man in a white coat stepped inside, holding a tablet. He looked at me the way people look at old photographs, carefully, like they're not sure what they're seeing is real. "Mr. Carter," he said slowly, as if testing the name. I nodded. He exhaled, long and quiet. "This is going to be difficult to explain," he said. And in that moment,
I understood something without him saying it. The accident wasn't the real problem. Something had happened while I was unconscious, something that shouldn't have been possible, something that had nothing to do with broken bones, and everything to do with my family.
The doctor didn't speak right away. He pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat down slowly, like a man preparing to tell someone the kind of truth that rearranges their entire life. I watched his face, trying to read it. Doctors are trained to hide emotion, but this one couldn't quite manage it. "Mr. Carter," he began carefully, "before I explain anything, I need to ask you a simple question." My throat burned when I swallowed. "Okay. Do you know today's date?" I shook my head. He turned the tablet toward me. "January 14th. I frowned. "That can't be right," I whispered. My accident. It had happened in early December. I remembered Christmas lights going up on houses, cold rain on the windshield, a radio playing an old song. "That's not possible," I said again, this time louder. The doctor didn't correct me. He didn't argue. He just nodded slowly. "You weren't unconscious for 3 days, Mr. Carter." My heart stopped. "What?" "You were unconscious for 7 weeks." The room went quiet in a way I have never felt before. 7 weeks. 7 weeks of my life erased. My mind tried to process it, but it felt like trying to hold water in my hands. "No," I said. "No, that's wrong. The nurse said 3 days." "She meant 3 days since you were transferred here. You were in another facility before this, a long-term care unit." "Transferred? Why would I be transferred? I wasn't old. I wasn't dying." "I don't understand," I said, my voice shaking now. He hesitated again, and then he said the words that made my blood turn cold. "Because your family signed a do not resuscitate order." I stared at him. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. "That's not funny," I said. He didn't smile. "It's not a joke." My ears started ringing. "They said I didn't want to be kept alive," he continued gently. "They provided documentation stating you had expressed this wish previously." "That's a lie," I whispered. He nodded. "I know." My chest started rising and falling faster. Machines beside me began beeping louder, reacting to my heart rate. "My children would never do that," I said, but it sounded like I was trying to convince myself. The doctor tapped the tablet and turned it toward me again. There was a document on the screen. My name, my signature, a DNR order. Signed, dated, witnessed. It looked exactly like my handwriting, exactly like my signature, except I had never seen that paper in my life. "I didn't sign this," I said. "I believe you," he replied quietly. My hands began to shake. "They told us," he continued, "that you had been struggling for months, memory issues, confusion, that you had prepared end-of-life instructions in advance." My stomach dropped. Memory issues? Confusion? They said you had early cognitive decline. I felt like I had been punched in the chest. They said you were not mentally sound. Not mentally sound. The words echoed in my head. Suddenly, small memories started surfacing. Arguments, my daughter insisting I was forgetting things, my son correcting stories I knew were true, them whispering when they thought I couldn't hear. I thought they were worried about me. I thought they were being protective. Oh God, they weren't worried. They were preparing. The doctor continued, his voice low now. "When you didn't wake up after the first week, your family made the decision to move you out of intensive care. They declined further aggressive treatment." I felt cold, colder than I've ever felt in my life.
They told us, he said, that you would not want extraordinary measures. I swallowed hard. So what changed? I asked. He gave me a look I will never forget. You did. What? You started breathing stronger on your own. Your vitals improved. You refused to die. A strange silence filled the room. And when that happened, your family stopped visiting. My throat tightened. They stopped answering calls. They stopped returning messages. They stopped paying the bills. A long pause. So, legally, you became the hospital's responsibility. My mind was spinning now. This didn't make sense. This wasn't my family. This wasn't my children. Unless it was. The doctor leaned forward slightly. There's something else you need to know. I braced myself. He lowered his voice. 2 weeks ago, your daughter filed paperwork with the court. For what? He hesitated. To have you declared legally incompetent. The air left my lungs. And your son, he added softly, filed for temporary control of your financial accounts. I felt like I was falling, not physically, but mentally, like the ground under my entire life had vanished. They told the court, he said, that you would never recover. I stared at the ceiling. Bright lights, white walls, beeping machines, and a truth so ugly that it made my chest hurt worse than the accident. They weren't waiting for me to wake up. They were waiting for me to disappear. And when I didn't, they tried to erase me on paper instead.
I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that document again. My name, my signature, a lie so clean it almost looked respectable. By morning, something inside me had changed. The confusion was gone. The shock was still there, but now it had direction. I needed proof. Not emotions, not memories. Proof. A soft knock came at 8:12 a.m. Not the hurried knock of a nurse, not the confident one of a doctor. This one was hesitant, careful. The door opened slowly, and my heart stopped. It was Mrs. Alvarez, my neighbor. 74 years old, tiny, always in cardigans, the woman who watered my plants when I traveled and sent over soup when I had the flu. She stood in the doorway like she wasn't sure she was allowed to be there. "Henry?" she whispered. I almost cried, not because I was emotional, but because she looked at me like I still existed, not like a problem, not like a burden, like a person. "You're awake," she said, covering her mouth. "How did you know I was here?" I asked. Her expression changed, confused. "Honey, I didn't." A cold feeling slid down my spine. "I came because of your house." "My house?" She nodded slowly and stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "I thought you were home. There have been people there." "People? What people?" She pulled a folded paper from her purse and handed it to me. A printed real estate listing. My address. My home. For sale. I stared at it. "That's not possible," I said. "It's been like that for 2 weeks," she replied. My fingers tightened around the paper. "The first day, movers came. They took furniture, boxes, your things. I asked your daughter what was happening." My heart pounded. "What did she say?" "She said you had to be moved to a facility, that you wouldn't be coming back, that the house was too big for just memories." I felt sick. She said it was time to let go. Let go? Of my life? Mrs. Alvarez's voice softened. "I knew something was wrong. You would never sell that house. You built that garden yourself. You said you wanted to die there." Tears filled her eyes. "So I called the hospital they said you were in." I froze. "They told me there was no patient by your name." My stomach dropped. "I tried 3 hospitals. Nothing. Your phone went straight to voicemail. Your kids stopped answering my calls."
She paused. "I thought you were already gone." The room felt smaller, harder to breathe in. "They told the neighbors you had passed peacefully," she said quietly. My ears rang. "What?" "They held a small memorial at the house. Only a few people. No body, of course. They said you didn't want a service." A memorial? For me? While I was still alive? I felt something dark begin to rise inside my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder. "They've been clearing the house out slowly. Antiques, tools, your study furniture, even the painting your wife loved." I closed my eyes. That painting. She bought it on our anniversary. "They sold your car last week." My hands were shaking now. "They're not waiting for me to die," I whispered. Mrs. Alvarez looked at me with pity. "They already decided you did." A knock interrupted us. Sharp, professional. The doctor stepped in, followed by a woman in a navy suit holding a folder. "Mr. Carter?" the doctor said gently. "This is Laura Bennett. She's from Hospital Legal Services." "Legal?" Laura gave me a polite nod. "I'm here because of some irregularities in your case." I glanced at Mrs. Alvarez. She stepped back quietly. Laura opened the folder and placed several papers on the bed. "Yesterday," she began, "someone attempted to access your patient file remotely." My heart thudded. "Who?" She looked at the page. "Your son." A chill ran through me. "He requested confirmation that you were still in a non-responsive state." Mrs. Alvarez gasped softly. Laura continued. "He also asked when life support would be reassessed." I felt my jaw tighten. "He wanted to know when I would die," I said flatly. Laura didn't deny it. "There's more," she said. She slid another document forward. A property transfer form. My house, signed over, to my son, dated 5 weeks ago. Signed. With my name. I didn't even need to say it. She already knew. "That's not your signature," Laura said calmly. "No, but it's a very good copy." She nodded. "We think this is bigger than medical fraud. This is coordinated identity and property theft." My mind went back to the DNR, the incompetency filing, the house sale, the memorial. They weren't reacting to my condition. They were executing a plan that required me to be dead. Laura closed the folder slowly. "We've contacted law enforcement." Mrs. Alvarez looked at me like she had just realized the full picture. "They didn't abandon you," she whispered. "They replaced you." And for the first time since I woke up, I understood something with terrifying clarity. My children weren't grieving. They were racing to finish everything before I woke up.
By the afternoon, the police had taken my statement. Laura from Legal Services stayed beside me the entire time, calm, precise, writing notes as if she had seen cases like this before. Maybe she had. Maybe I wasn't special, just another elderly parent quietly erased while still breathing. But to me, this was my life, my home, my children, and now my evidence. "Do you feel strong enough to visit the property?" the detective asked. My heart skipped. "You mean my house?" He nodded. "They're in the middle of listing it. If we move fast, we can document everything before it changes hands." I didn't hesitate. "Yes." They helped me into a wheelchair. My legs were still weak, my chest sore, but adrenaline did what medicine couldn't. Mrs. Alvarez insisted on coming. "I want to see what they did," she said, her voice firm despite her small frame. The drive felt longer than it should have. Every street looked familiar but distant, like I was watching my own life through glass. When we turned onto my road, my breath caught. There was a "for sale" sign planted into my front lawn, bright, clean, new, like nothing painful had ever happened there, like the house had no history, no memories, no soul. The detective parked across the street. I stared at the front door, my blue door.
the one my wife painted herself because she said it made the house look hopeful. It was open. Inside, strangers moved around. 2 men carrying out a bookshelf, a woman taking photos with a camera, a realtor, preparing my life for display. I felt something inside me twist. They wheeled me up the driveway. The realtor turned, smiling automatically. "Hello, we're not open for showings yet, but—" She stopped when she saw the police, and then she saw me. Her smile vanished. I thought— "Thought what?" the detective asked. She swallowed. "I was told the owner passed away." I held her gaze. "I'm the owner." Silence fell heavy in the air. The detective showed his badge. "We need everyone out, now." The workers left quickly, murmuring to each other. The realtor stood frozen. "I had no idea," she whispered. I believed her. She wasn't the villain. She was just part of the cleanup. They wheeled me inside, and I almost didn't recognize it. The living room was empty, not messy, empty, like the house had been drained. The couch was gone, the rugs gone, the family photos from the wall gone. Only pale rectangles remained where memories used to hang. I felt my throat tighten. "This is where we had Christmas every year," I said quietly. Mrs. Alvarez covered her mouth. We moved toward the kitchen, cabinets open, dishes missing, the table where my children did homework, gone. I looked down the hallway toward my study, my favorite room. The door was open. I didn't need to go inside to know. It was stripped. The detective walked slowly, filming everything. "This is important, don't worry." But I wasn't worried about evidence. I was mourning. We reached the staircase. Each step felt heavier. They wheeled me into my bedroom. The bed was gone, the dresser gone. Even the curtains my wife chose were removed. Just a mattress stain on the floor where the bed once stood. I closed my eyes. "She died in this room," I whispered. Mrs. Alvarez began to cry softly. "Take your time," the detective said. But I couldn't, because something was pulling me toward the garage. "Please," I said, "take me there." They wheeled me down the side hallway. The garage door was half open, sunlight cutting across the floor. And there, stacked neatly against the wall, were boxes, dozens of them, labeled with black marker. Dad, papers, Dad, photos, Dad, old stuff. Old stuff. My life reduced to storage labels. The detective opened one. Inside were photo albums. Another box, my military medals. Another, my wife's jewelry case. They hadn't thrown my life away. They had sorted it, prepared it, like estate workers do after a funeral. Except I never died. The detective's phone rang. He answered quietly, then looked at me. "They're bringing your son in for questioning," he said. A strange calm came over me. Not anger, not sadness, something colder. "They really thought I wouldn't wake up," I said. Mrs. Alvarez nodded slowly. "They didn't make a mistake," she whispered. "They made a plan." And standing there, in the garage of my own half-emptied home, I realized something that hurt more than anything else. My children hadn't acted in panic. They hadn't acted in grief. They had acted with preparation. This wasn't a reaction to my accident. This was something they were ready to do. All they needed was for me to stop breathing.
They brought Daniel in just before sunset. I wasn't at the station. I didn't want to be. I was back at the house, my house, sitting in a folding chair the detectives found in the garage, wrapped in a blanket Mrs. Alvarez insisted I use, watching strangers photograph the ruins of my life like it was a crime scene. Because it was. Just not the kind that leaves blood on the floor. This one left fingerprints on paperwork, footprints in bank accounts, and silence where love used to live. The detective's phone buzzed. He stepped aside to take the call. I watched his expression change from neutral to focused. Then he came back. "He's talking," he said. I didn't ask what that meant. I already knew. Daniel had never been good under pressure. He was the kind of man who sounded confident when everything went his way and fell apart when it didn't. "What is he saying?" I asked quietly. The detective hesitated. "He said he thought you weren't going to make it after the accident." A hollow laugh escaped my chest. "That's not an answer," I said. He nodded. "He admitted he contacted the realtor the same night you were hospitalized, said he was preparing for the inevitable." Mrs. Alvarez shook her head slowly. "The inevitable," she repeated. I stared at the empty living room through the garage doorway. "They didn't wait for me to die," I said. "They scheduled it." An hour later, Laura arrived with printed documents in a folder so thick it barely closed. Bank records, property transfer attempts, digital signatures, email threads between my children and the realtor, dates, times, proof. She knelt beside me and opened it like she was showing me a map. "Your daughter, Emily," she said gently, "transferred funds from your personal account to a joint account 3 days after the accident." I swallowed. "How much?" $82,000. I nodded slowly. "Continue." "Daniel initiated the property sale paperwork 48 hours after that." I looked at the sky turning orange above my driveway. They hadn't been grieving in hospital hallways. They had been planning in living rooms. "Here's the part you need to understand," Laura said softly. "This wasn't panic. This was coordination." I closed my eyes. I didn't feel rage. I felt something worse. Clarity. "They had talked about this before," I said. She didn't respond. She didn't need to, because we both knew you don't move this fast unless you've imagined it already. The detective returned. "They're charging him with fraud, attempted unlawful property transfer, and financial exploitation." "And Emily?" I asked. "She'll be brought in tonight." I nodded once, not in satisfaction, not in relief, just acceptance. The sun had almost disappeared when they helped me stand and walk into the living room. I wanted to feel the floor beneath my feet. This time, no wheelchair, no help. Just me. My house echoed when I stepped inside. Every sound bounced off empty walls. I walked slowly to the spot where the couch used to be. "This is where they used to sit with me," I whispered. Mrs. Alvarez stood behind me quietly. "They used to fight over who got the corner seat." My voice broke. "And now they fought over who got the house." Silence wrapped around us, heavy, final. Laura placed the folder on the windowsill. "You'll get everything back," she said. I looked at her. "That's not what I lost." She understood. That night, they took me back to the hospital, not because I needed treatment, because I needed rest. As I lay in the bed, staring at the ceiling, I thought about something strange. When I woke up after the accident, my first thought was my children. Even after everything. That's what being a parent does. It makes your heart loyal, even when the people aren't. But something had changed now. Not my love, my blindness. I could love them and still see them clearly. And that clarity hurt less than the lies. The next morning, the detective came with an update. He said, "They both asked the same question." I looked at him. "What question?" He paused. "They asked, 'How is he alive?'" I let out a slow breath. Not anger, not sadness, just something close to peace. "Tell them," I said quietly, "I never left." If this story touched you, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Real stories like this remind us that truth doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply survives. Share where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to turn on notifications for the next story.